Welcome to Being Humankind, with your hosts Brian, Mike, and Neely. We explore what it means to be human in a time of disconnection.
What work of art, movie, or book most represents you as a person?
Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to be very prolific answering that question. I don't think there's one book or one work of art that I think describes me, as a person. So I can't really narrow that down for you.
Okay. Um, Anything you can think that you connect with, that in a meaningful way?
Are you asking me if I enjoy art?
Yeah, like which piece of art maybe do you connect with the most? Maybe just on an emotional level, not even on identifying as a person.
I think I find when I'm like walking through a museum, although I enjoy all different types of art, I think I find particular interest in looking at scenes of people interacting together in a different time period. Strolling down the street, sitting at a luncheonette counter, um, like that famous painting. Is it Night Stalker? I can't remember who the artist is right now, but that's the type of artwork I enjoy. I like to see, what people were doing, 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Were they fishing off a pier? Were they working in a warehouse? Were they sitting around with their family? And I kind of try to think about what their life was like and what their interactions were.
Interesting.
Any any really interesting pieces of art that struck you when you've traveled that you think back on that you've remembered?
Well, one in particular that only because I have a personal connection to it. There's a famous piece of art that's hanging in the Chicago Institute of Art. It's a famous painting that I'm sure everyone is familiar with. It's called American Gothic. And it's a painting of a man who looks like a farmer, and he's holding a pitchfork, and he's standing next to what appears to be his wife, and behind them is their farmhouse. And I said, "Oh, there's that famous American Gothic that I'm so familiar with, and everyone in the United States is very familiar with that particular iconic painting." But then I was reading the description on the wall, and I was shocked to find out that uh, the painter, whose last name is Wood, asked his dentist to pose for that picture. So
Huh.
well, my whole life I'm thinking there's a painting of a farmer and his wife. And it actually wasn't even his wife. That was the sister of the painter,
Huh.
who was much younger than the guy with the pitchfork. And come to find out that she was very, very upset that everyone thought that she was old enough to be his wife, when in fact she was really young enough to be his daughter. So I kind of what I learned from that painting was never believe everything you see, don't believe everything you hear, and don't even believe what you think sometimes. But you could be really, really shocked to find out that he was no farmer at all, but he happened to be a dentist that graduated from, I don't know, the University of Missouri or something in 1895. And so that's my
Wow.
American Gothic story.
That's a cool story. Did you guys know that?
No.
Never knew that. Never knew that.
That is really cool.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, because I don't think most people know that at all. That's awesome.
Sometimes when I'm lecturing to dentists on different subjects, and I talk a lot about pain management, and I talk about the prescription opioid crisis, and I try to teach dentists to be more responsible prescribers and only use opioids as a last resort. And I go through a lot of the history of the prescription opioid crisis, and I talk about how back 150 years ago everyone was using opium, and they didn't think it was that much of a problem at all. It did not even require a prescription. You could buy it in a drugstore or just a grocery store. And then they started to realize that it did have some addictive properties, and then they marketed morphine as a cure for opium addiction. And they started, this is around the time of the Civil War, and they were injecting this into all the Civil War veterans, and they would leave the service addicted to morphine. So at the time, they thought it was a cure for opium addiction, but it's obviously very addictive itself. And these soldiers were discharged from the service, these veterans, and they used to call it soldier's disease because they had a lifelong addiction to opiates. So then further down the road, is, well, we have to do something about this morphine addiction. So they started to market heroin. And they said heroin is a cure for morphine addiction. And we all know how that worked out. That was also available without a prescription for many years until 1914. You could buy it without a prescription. Then it was available until 1924. You could buy it without a prescription. So then around 1996, the pharmaceutical company started marketing OxyContin and said, we found the Holy Grail. This is the cure for heroin addiction. So that's why I bring up the story about the American Gothic when I'm lecturing to dentists. I say, don't always believe what people tell you, because there was a time that opium was safe and that morphine was the cure for opium, and that heroin was the cure for morphine addiction, and then OxyContin was supposed to be the cure for all types of opioid addiction. And we know that hundreds of thousands of people have died because of prescription overdoses. So what I learned from American Gothic and life in general is don't always believe everything you see and hear and think.